In response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the West has imposed huge sanctions on Moscow.
Today, I'm announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy.
These sanctions include freezing assets of companies and executives from Russia, banning the entry of Russian planes, removing Russian banks from the SWIFT clearing system, and much more. Different companies and giant corporations seek to punish the regime in Moscow as well. For example, both Nike and IKEA closed their stores in Russia. Even FIFA, the biggest international governing body of football, have suspended the Russian teams from all international competitions, including the World Cup. Russia is suffering a severe economic blow and is now looking for another place where it can do business. Will China be able to save Putin from these sanctions? Under Xi Jinping, relations between Beijing and Moscow have warmed up considerably and are now better than ever. Common hostility towards the West helps as well, but China's trade with the US and Europe is still 10 times greater than the trade with Russia, and it might fear endangering it to help Putin in the war. The Chinese will be happy to buy more Russian gas, but right now there are simply not enough pipelines connecting these two countries. Despite the warm relationship between them, Russia and the Chinese interests are not always aligned. The Russian and Chinese armies are conducting joint maneuvers, but Putin is troubled by China's economic presence in Central Asian countries, which are usually under his influence. Experts say that the Chinese government may help Putin within its limits, and that the Chinese companies may take advantage of the situation to get better deals with Russia. But they will avoid openly violating sanctions on Moscow, a violation that could make China itself subject to severe penalties. Trade between Russia and China grew to more than 140 billion US dollar last year, while China trade with the US and the EU is estimated at a 1.6 trillion. China will not necessarily be willing to risk that in order to help Putin. China, the second largest economy in the world, is the only major country that has not explicitly condemned Russia for invading Ukraine, but at the same time it is refraining from supporting Russia's actions. They say that they support the territorial integrity of all countries, alongside the need to respect Russia's security concerns. In a vote of condemnation to Russia at the UN General Assembly, China was among the few abstainers. The degree of Chinese aid that Russia will receive is expected to prove to be a critical factor in the extent to which Moscow can deal with the long-term consequences of the sanctions. China has been buying billions of dollars in Russian gas for its economy, and these acquisitions have become a major lifeline for Putin since the economic and trade sanctions imposed on him by the West over the 2014 occupation of the Crimea Peninsula in Ukraine and its annexation to Russia. In the last decade, Russia has tried to expand its exports to the Far East to reduce its dependence on European markets. And now Moscow and Beijing are both trying to reduce their dependence on the dollar and its use in trade. All that in order to reduce their exposure to the US financial system and its pressures. One-sixth of all Russian exports in the past year were purchased by China, including two-thirds of the oil and gas that Russia exported during that time. China would like to buy more gas, but for now Moscow cannot meet the demand because the pipelines connecting the two countries are full. Moscow and Beijing signed a 30-year supply agreement last month, but admitted that the pipelines to transport this gas would not be ready for at least the next 3 years. China has already taken advantage of the sanctions on Russia in 2014 to extract more convenient deals from it, both in terms of gas price and in terms of delivery date. Chinese companies will strive to maximize their profits and achieve the lowest possible prices. Last week, China announced that it would approve for the first time imports of wheat from Russia. While such imports could not cover Putin's losses from gas revenues in the event that Europe stopped buying from him, it could help him reduce the damage to the revenues of Russian farmers. Alongside all this, it is important to remember that the hostility between China and the US and Europe has worsened greatly in recent years, due to Western claims about the malicious activities of Chinese technology companies, the violation of human rights of minorities in China, the elimination of democracy in Hong Kong, and China's territorial claims for some disputed areas. China is also accused by the US and its allies of helping Iran and North Korea to bypass the sanctions imposed by the Security Council. But the extent of these violations and the penalties imposed on them have been limited. Beijing claims it is complying with the UN ban on most types of trade with North Korea due to its nuclear program, but is accused of not doing enough in this aspect, fearing it would cause an economic collapse in Pyongyang and a flood of refugees at its borders. Over the years, there have been suspicions that ships carrying the Chinese flag are transporting oil and coal to North Korea, although it is unclear whether this was done with the approval of China's leaders. North Korea, for its part, has been accused of using Chinese brokers to launder stolen cryptocurrencies. In any case, there is no doubt that the West's response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine is much harsher than it has demonstrated in other international conflicts. So countries around the world are more likely to think twice about violating the sanctions it imposes.